To understand the rise and fall of the Mahishmati Empire, we have to look at the political machinery running it. This massive state maintains its power through a single, uncompromising governing philosophy: absolute, unquestioning obedience. At the top of this system sits Rajmata Sivagami. She operates on a strict doctrine, where her spoken decrees serve as the final law of the land. Once she makes a decision, it cannot be debated, appealed, or reversed. This entire political infrastructure is built on the concept of vachan, an unbreakable oath. Every citizen, soldier, and minister is bound to a strict hierarchy, with power flowing exclusively downward from the throne. There are no checks, no balances, and no room for dissent. This rigid structure creates short-term stability, but it carries a massive vulnerability. If the ruler at the top ever makes a decision blinded by pride or manipulated by bad information, the entire system is forced to carry out a catastrophe. This structural weakness is the battleground for two princes, the ambitious Balaladeva and Amarendra Baahubali. Baahubali operates on dharma. Instead of following archaic rules, he connects directly to the citizens rather than routing actions exclusively through the throne. Balaladeva watches this and recognizes a tactical opportunity. He knows he cannot defeat Baahubali on a physical battlefield. Instead, he plans to weaponize Baahubali's own morality against him. To destroy his rival, Balaladeva doesn't need to lift a weapon. He only needs to orchestrate a scenario where Baahubali's independent sense of right and wrong directly violates Sivagami's authoritarian pride. The opening move relies on exploiting a secret. Balaladeva discovers that Baahubali is deeply in love with Princess Devasena of the neighboring kingdom. Immediately, he formally requests that Sivagami secure Devasena as his own bride. Operating on pure royal hubris and completely unaware of Baahubali's feelings, Sivagami agrees. She issues a binding royal promise, granting Balaladeva the princess's hand. But Devasena is fiercely independent. She looks at the lavish gifts sent without asking her consent and flatly refuses. This public rejection deeply wounds Sivagami's ego. The snare is now perfectly set. Sivagami faces an impossible choice. She must either admit she made a mistake, shattering the illusion of her infallible authority, or she must forcefully subjugate Devasena to protect the integrity of her unbreakable oath. She chooses her oath. The tension erupts when the royal commander, Sethupati, begins abusing women inside a temple. Devasena defends herself and the others by cutting off his fingers. Under Mahishmati's strict laws, bypassing legal procedure is a severe crime, regardless of the moral context. Devasena is dragged into the royal court in chains, treated as a dangerous criminal for an act of clear self-defense. Watching his pregnant wife stand chained before her abuser, Baahubali makes his choice. He ignores the king and the court's rules. He draws his sword and executes Setupati right there on the palace floor. For Sivagami, the spirit of justice no longer matters. By acting independently, Baahubali has broken the strict letter of her law. She strips him of his titles and banishes him from the royal court. Balaladeva's strategy is performing flawlessly. He successfully used the rigid legal code to turn an act of true justice into an act of treason. The endgame is now in motion. Balaladeva manipulates a naive noble into a fake assassination attempt, creating the perfect legal framework to frame Baahubali for a conspiracy against the crown. To carry out the execution, Balaladeva targets the system's most tragic victim, Katapa. As a soldier bound by a generational blood oath, Katapa's vow to blindly obey the throne strips him of all free will. Acting on Sivagami's direct orders, Katapa travels to the dark forest. From the shadows, he drives a massive blade directly into Baahubali's back. He murders the man he raised and loved solely because a legal obligation compels him to do so. This state-sanctioned murder was the intended outcome of the Mahishmati system. By prioritizing blind obedience over individual judgment, the law itself became the weapon that killed its best offender. Sivagami discovers the truth of her son's conspiracy only after the blood is spilled. The realization costs her her life, and plunges the empire into a 25-year dark age. Balaladeva assumes total control, ruling with brutal tyranny. Devasena is imprisoned in the palace courtyard, chained to the earth, enduring decades of agony. When an empire prioritizes the ego and authority of its rulers over the fundamental rights of its citizens, it rapidly collapses into a totalitarian nightmare. A quarter of a century later, the murdered prince's son, Mahendra Baahubali, arrives at the gates. He returns to avenge his fractured family and rally the oppressed citizens. His first victory is freeing Katapa from ideological chains. Together, they lead a rebellion that shatters Balalaladeva's regime, toppling the physical monuments of his ego. Standing in the ashes of the old system, Mahendra takes the throne. But his royal oath is entirely different from his grandmother's. He doesn't swear to maintain unquestioned authority. He pledges his power directly to protecting the dignity and safety of his people. True leadership rests on the moral courage to recognize when a law is unjust. The return of the Baahubali line proves that protecting the vulnerable matters more than preserving an obsolete decree.